Grüß, willkommen in einem Anwenderaufregens video. Welcome to another exciting video, in this case part 11 or 12 of my equipment series of videos, in this case covering French armoured fighting vehicles, specifically French light tanks. What I'll be attempting to do is to provide an overview of the armoured vehicles in the French army in 1940. You will quickly notice a large number of these vehicles were built in very small numbers, often only one, which indicates it was probably a prototype. Many vehicles were also upgunned during their life. Finally, you'll notice that starting from 1936, the French created a huge number of different prototype vehicles, which I find quite interesting. On the 9th of October 1936, 21 Renault ZT4s, a tropical version with improved cooling, were ordered for the colonial troops to replace their obsolete Renault FT-17s that were not really very well suited for the role of long-range surveillance, typically required in colonial conditions. Only after the beginning of the Second World War, where more means were made available, that production slowly started. 3 units were made in February 1940, 9 in March, 15 in April and 13 in May. Of the 40 hulls produced, not a single turret had been fitted. However, after the German invasion, an emergency plan was considered to equip them with 25mm guns. In the end, some were, in June, sent to the front armed only with a makeshift machine gun mount, and others remained at the factory. A few were sent into combat with their Avis 1 turrets. That month, probably about 7 hulls were finished. The Renault FT, frequently referred to in the post-war one literature as the FT-17 or something similar, was a French light tank that was among the most revolutionary and influential tank designs in history. The FT was the first production tank to have its armament within a fully rotating turret. The first turrets designed for the FT were circular cast steel versions, almost identical to that of the prototype. It was designed to carry a Hotchkiss 8mm machine gun. In April 1917, the French army decided for tactical reasons that some vehicles should be capable of carrying a small cannon. The 37mm Putex gun was chosen, and attempts were made to produce a cast steel turret capable of accommodating it, but they were not very successful. The first 150 FTs were for training only and made of non-hardened steel, plus including the first model of the turret. Meanwhile, the Bellet company had produced a new design, a polygon turret of a riveted plate, which was simpler to produce than the early cast steel turret. It was given the name Omnibus, since it could easily be adapted to mount either the Hotchkiss machine gun or the Putex 37mm with its telescopic sight. This turret was fitted to production models in large numbers. In 1918, Forgeurs-Isieux, my apologies for my atrocious French accent, Paul Gauguin produced a successful circular turret which was mostly cast with some rolled parts. The Renault FT tanks were also fielded in limited numbers during World War II in Poland, Finland, France, Greece, Romania and the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, although they really were already obsolete. In May 1940, the French army still had 7 frontline battalions, each equipped with 63 FTs, 1 understrength battalion in addition, as well as 3 independent companies, each with 10, for an organic strength of 504 vehicles. 105 more were in service in the colonies of Morocco and Algeria, and 58 in French Levant, Madagascar and Indochina. When the best French units were cut off by the German drive to the English Channel, around 390 FTs, previously used for training or stored in depot, joined the 184 to 192 FTs in service with internal security units. The Wehrmacht captured 1,704 FTs. The FT Model 31 was an upgraded tank with the 7.5mm Rebelle machine gun. After trials from 1929 to 1931, this modification was made in 1933 to 1934 on about 1,000 FT-17 tanks still in French stock. This version is sometimes referred to as the FT-31, although this was not the official name. I'm uncertain if this upgraded version of the FT-17 ever went beyond prototype or even a plan, but in 1937 some 37mm armed FT tanks were refurbished. I suspect if this was correct, it was in low numbers, and if it was in high numbers, it was just basically a, basic refurbishment, make the engine better, etc., and offered no real significant technical advantages. The bulk of the FT tanks in 1940 were placed in the independent tank battalions. There were 7 frontline battalions, each equipped with 63 FTs. The Renault Model 1933, or AMR 33, or Renault VM, was a French light tank developed during the interbellum and used in the Second World War. Developed by Renault from 1932, this type was ordered by the French cavalry in 1933. A total of 123 would be built until 1935. The AMR 33 was lightly armed and armoured. Although it was very fast for its day, it proved to be a mechanically unreliable vehicle, especially its suspension elements being too weak. It was therefore succeeded by an improved type, the AMR 35. On the 8th of March 1933, the cavalry had already made a preliminary order of 45 for whatever type would be chosen. This was confirmed on the 22nd of June, together with a second order of 20 vehicles. Deliveries were to start no later than the 1st of July. In the autumn, a third order was made of 50 units. The first vehicle was only delivered on the 1st of June 1934. However, due to financial difficulties, the last of the 115 were only delivered in September. The 115 vehicles available in 1934 were first assigned to the 5 cavalry divisions, a squadron of 15, 3 platoons of 4, 2 reserve tanks and a command tank for the GAM, the group or the reconnaissance group within the cavalry divisions, of 3 of the cavalry divisions. The 5th Cavalry Division got only 10 vehicles, and the 4th Cavalry Division received 40, a squadron for its 4th GAM, or reconnaissance formation, and its 18th Dragoons, and another 10 for its 4th BDP, or Bataillon de Dragon Portes, or mechanised battalion. In 1935, the 5th Cavalry Division received the 3 rebuilt prototypes, bringing its strength up to 13. AMR 33s were also allocated to 2 independent cavalry regiments, the 9th Dragoons, which received 8 from the first batch of 65, and the 11th Chasseurs, which received 12 from the second batch of 50. The organic strength thus equalled the total AMR 33 fleet. The role of the AMR 33s in the cavalry division was largely that of direct support of its dismounted horsemen. In 1934, it was decided to transfer the 4th Cavalry Division into an armoured division, the 1st DLM, the Division Léger Mécaniques, or Mechanical Light Division. For its sole tanks, this division then had 6 squadrons equipped with AMR 33s, the main battle vehicle being the half-track AMC P16s. Thus, its fighting power was very limited indeed, but new tanks had been ordered, such as the AMR 34 and AMR 35s and the S35. In 1937, a new DLM was created from the 5th Cavalry Division, the 2nd DLMM. The DLMs had 3 squadrons of AMRs, each to accompany their motorised infantry and other types of troops as well. At the time, however, the mechanical unreliability of the AMR 33 became obvious and was decided only to use the AMR 35s in the DLMs, or Cavalry Armoured Divisions, concentrating the AMR 33s into the remaining cavalry divisions. In the case of mobilisation, each of these would now have a large RAM, a regiment automise, or tank regiment, or light tank regiment, to be created from the peacetime GAM, with 2 AMR squadrons. These again enlarged to 4 platoons of 5 plus 2 reserve tanks and a command tank. Total divisional AMR strength would thus be 46. As there were 3 divisions which needed this vehicle, their need for 138 vehicles could not be met by the existing number of AMR 33s. Therefore, the 1st Cavalry Division was to use the AMR 35s, and the only units deploying the AMR 33s remained the 2nd Cavalry and 3rd Cavalry Division. At the outbreak of the Second World War, France participated from the 2nd of September 1939, and its total organic AMR 33 strength was only 92, and the remaining 28 AMR 33s were kept in reserves. On the 10th of May, the day of the German invasion, the measures the French had adopted to increase production were shown to have been insufficient. Only the 5th DLC had its official strength of 26 vehicles, the other 3 divisions having apparently not yet started to make an attempt to increase their strength. The 2nd DLC fielded 22 AMR-33s, the 3rd DLC 20 and the 4th DLC 23. The total strength was 91. There was thus also a material reserve of 22 vehicles. In the Battle of France, the AMR-33 fared rather badly. The DLC divisions which did possess a full complement of AMR-33s possessed an AMR-33 company in the Motorised Infantry Battalion. This consisted of 10 vehicles. The Mechanised Battalion of the same division also possessed a AMR-33 company. Some divisions, this was equipped with AMR-35s, of which some were equipped with the 13.2mm HMG or 25mm anti-tank guns and unofficially referred to as tank destroyers. The DLM division also contained a company of AMR-33s in the armoured regiments, organised into their own battalions of 33 vehicles each. The AMR-35 originated from a project in 1933 to improve the earlier AMR-33 by moving the engine from the front to the back. In 1934, a stronger suspension was fitted and the type was chosen to replace the AMR-33 on the production lines that year. 3 orders were made by the French cavalry of, in total, 200 vehicles in 5 versions, including 2 machine gun tanks, 2 tank destroyer types, and a command tank. Later, 10 were ordered of a radio communication variant, the Renault YS, and over 40 were built of a tropical version, the ZT4. More than half of the AMR-35s were armed with a 7.5mm machine gun. On the 20th of April 1936, from an order of 30 vehicles, 15 would be the 7.5mm machine gun version, 5 of the ADF-1, and 5 each of the 2 tank destroyer types, the ZT2 and the ZT3. On the 9th of October 1936, a third and final contract was signed of 70 vehicles, 60 of the 7.5mm machine gun version, half of these without a radio set, and 5 each of the ZT2 and ZT3, which were the tank destroyer varieties, with a final delivery before the 7th of August 1937. A small number, possibly no more than 50 AMR-35s, were armed with the 13.2mm machine gun, which was considered a tank destroyer. Also, an even smaller number, possibly no more than 20 AMR-35s, were armed with the much more effective 25mm anti-tank gun. This was a much more effective tank destroyer as a result. During the Battle of France, 120 AMR-33s and 187 ZTs, or AMR-35s, were available. The AMR-35s were used to equip 3 squadrons in the 1st and 2nd DLM, 66 tanks in each division, and 1 squadron of 22 in the 1st Cavalry Light Division for an organic total strength of 152. Each platoon of 5 typically had 2 13.2mm machine gun vehicles and 3 7.5mm machine gun vehicles. The GRDI, the Group de Reconnaissance de Division de Infantry, of the 5 DIM, or Motorised Infantry Divisions, each had an anti-tank platoon with 2 ZT2s, that's 13.2mm machine guns, and 2 ZT3s, that is a 25mm anti-tank gun. There were also 5 AMR-30s present in the driver's school at Saumur. 8 were in the General Material Reserve. Of the 10 Renault YSs, 4 were used by the cavalry, 4 by the infantry, and 2 by the artillery. The Renault YS2 prototype, despite not being made of hardened steel, was deployed by the 71st RA, the artillery regiment of the 2nd DLM. During the Battle of France, it was discovered the 13.2mm machine gun was incapable of defeating even the German armoured cars at normal combat ranges, its bullets being deflected by the sloped armour on the German vehicles. However, most AMRs were lost due to mechanical trouble. All vehicles assigned on the 10th of May had been lost by the end of the month. In June, an ad hoc unit was created, the 2nd DLM, and part of this was the 4th RAM Regiment, the Regiment of Light Armour, that used some AMR-30 taken from material reserve. The Reconnaissance Battalion in the Motorised Infantry Division contained a company of AMR-35s, some of which may have been the tank destroyer variety. This had a strength of 13 vehicles. The cavalry divisions also contained a company of AMR-35s with a strength of 13 vehicles each. The DLM divisions contained a company of AMR-ZT tanks, which were most likely the AMR-35s. The strength was 20 vehicles in each company. I'm uncertain of the exact structure of the company, but this is the most likely structure that I would estimate. The DLM division contained 2 battalions of AMR-35s in the armoured regiments, organised into 3 companies, each of 11 vehicles. In 1933, the Hotchkiss Company proposed to build a cheap, mass-produced light infantry tank. In reaction to this proposal, the French army invited the whole of the French industry to offer alternative designs. In the end, 3 of the competing prototypes will be taken to production: the Hotchkiss H-35, the Renault R-35 and the FCM-36. The FCM-36, or Char Léger model 1936 FCM, was a light infantry tank that was designed for the French army prior to World War II. It had a crew of 2 and was equipped with a short 37mm gun and a 7.5mm coaxial machine gun. Power was provided by a diesel engine. Even before the type had been approved, because of Germany's remilitarisation of the Rhineland, the French army on the 26th of May made a hasty order of 100 vehicle of the Char light model tank, 1936 FCM, for 450,000 francs apiece. The production vehicle had to be equipped with a 37mm gun. On the 12th of May 1938 and the 3rd of February 1939, 2 additional orders were made of 100 each. However, when the last tank, series number 30,100, of the original order was delivered on the 13th of March 1939, FCM suddenly announced that it would permanently cease production unless the price was raised to at least 900,000 francs. Apparently, this was the actual cost of production. In view of these circumstances, the French Inspector General allowed the production of the hull to be discontinued. In March and April, 2 battalions, each during those months in 1939, were created. Unique among the light, or the battalions equipped with light infantry tanks, these units would be called Bataillon de Chars Légers, or BCLs. The 4th and 7th BCL each received 45 FCM-36 tanks. They had an organic strength, or a fighting strength, of 39, 3 companies of 13, a material company of 6, and used 5 tanks for driver training. After war was declared against Germany in September 1939, both FCM battalions were combined, together with the 3rd BCC, which was an R-35 unit, into the 503rd Group of the Bataillon de Chars, the armour reserve of the Second Army. The Hotchkiss H-35, or Char Light Model 1935H, was a French cavalry tank developed prior to World War II. Despite having been designed from 1939 as a rather slow but well-armoured light infantry support tank, the type was initially rejected by the French infantry because it proved too difficult to steer while driving cross-country, and was instead adopted in 1936 by the French cavalry arm. Most of the H-35 tanks built were armed with the L-21 37mm howitzer. Some sources indicated that some of the H-35 light tanks, that is the initial batch, were equipped with a more powerful L-33 37mm gun to give it additional anti-tank capability. I'm uncertain how many of this occurred, or if it was a retrofit of an older tank. I suspect the latter. From 1938, an improved version was produced with a more powerful engine, the Char Léger Model 1935H, Model 39, which from 1940 was also fitted with a longer, more powerful 37mm gun, the L-33. It was intended to make this improved variant the standard light tank, with at least 4,000 produced to equip new armoured divisions of both the cavalry and infantry arms, or type. But due to the defeat of France in June 1940, total production of both subtypes were limited to about 1,200 vehicles. The main difference between the H-35 and the H-39, which was the model number of the improved version, was the engine. But once again, some sources indicated the H-39 were also equipped with the older L-21 37mm gun. I have no idea how many were equipped thus, and I suspect this would have been rather rare. I suspect only the initial batches would have had this inferior gun. Most of the H-39s used the much better L-33's 37mm gun. Most of the H-39s were equipped with the L-33 37mm gun, which provided reasonably effective anti-tank capability against the Germans. While its penetration was only marginally improved, it had a greater range. There was another version, the H-40, and this is a little bit confusing. I suspect the H-40 was in fact similar to the H-39, and it was probably the same vehicle, but this version was built in 1940 and possessed a number of minor enhancements the cavalry required. Specifically, the 37mm gun muzzle velocity was increased, and there was some increased armour protection. Not many of these vehicles seem to have been produced. The H-35, H-39s and possibly the H-40s were organised into tank regiments in the DLM divisions. Each light tank battalion consisted of 44 light tanks and 4 command tanks. Each company consisted of 13 vehicles each. The tank regiments in the DCR divisions also contained 2 light tank battalions, which were likely similar in size, consisting of 3 companies of 13 light tanks and a HQ of 5 light tanks and 4 command tanks. The R-35 was designed from 1933 onwards and produced from 1936. The type was intended as an infantry support light tank, equipping autonomous tank battalions that would be allocated to individual infantry divisions to assist them in exploiting or executing offensive operations. To this end, it was relatively well armoured, but slow and lacking a good anti-tank capability, fitted with the short L-22 37mm gun. The R-35 was equipped with the ubiquitous L-21 37mm howitzer, which was a very effective anti-infantry weapon, but was lacking when it came to anti-tank capabilities. I assume when initially designed, or the formations were designed, anti-tank capability was not foremost in the mind of the designers or the organisers, and it was more about anti-infantry capability, which required a howitzer. An improved version, the R-38, was equipped with a more powerful L-33 37mm gun, which had improved anti-tank capabilities. By 1937, it had become obvious the original suspension system was unreliable and ineffective. After many trials, it was replaced in the 1940 production run, after the 1,540 vehicles had been built with the original design, by an AMX system using 12 wheels fitted with 6 vertical springs on the 2nd of December 1936. About the same time, the radio and a much more powerful gun was also introduced. The long-barreled L-35 37mm SA-38 in the adaptive cast APX R1 turret gave it an effective or a more effective anti-tank capability, 40mm at 500 metres. The new combination was named the Charles Leger Model 1935R, Model 1939, but it was more commonly known as the Renault R40. The 4th DCR Division was equipped with an entire light tank brigade. Within the brigade there were 3 R-35 battalions and in addition 1 H-39 battalion. And so I come to a close of my Part 12 weapon series of videos, in this case French World War II light tanks. Alle guten Dingen kommen zu einem Ende.